Association is
Or the,
pretty much kaput.
no, the,
Looks to me like
what's the
that.
thing that we have to post on the internet?
You can gobble that bunch of change.
Yes,
Have that
Well,
done
we're gonna
by-
yeah.
Well, they're the ones that might have to
No, I
fix
don't
it.
think so.
Hopefully it'll be out.
Huh?
Think it'll be out soon.
George and them were talking about that and make sure that everything is, you know, if he does retire, he has everything planned yet.
No.
So they'll know who she's.
But these girls are pretty strong about doing that.
Yeah,
Physically, I didn't
I
have
knew that was
everything
gonna
set
happen
up
eventually.
in advance.
Right.
Kat is in the room, so she's probably gonna have the recorder and stuff. If we don't have one more person show up, then we're gonna be able to have a phone.
Oh, you've been on this, you've been in this crime board a long time.
Nineteen ninety-eight.
To change the rules. They have it that I was not here and I made motions, so
Long lesson in
they
now.
need to,
Is that correct, Stephanie?
sent
We gotta have one more?
memo, but they,
Huh?
We have to have one more board member?
No,
Have a
there's
quorum?
7 and we have 4, so we have majority.
Okay. Good morning, beautiful. How are you? Oh, it's Monday.
let's say it's gonna
Have Dawson sit up
Did
here.
you, were you basing your thing on this?
Dawson will come up here and sit right here.
not on the draft.
Put on the roll call?
We took on some.
No.
No, but over here,
We created
on the
this.
minutes from the last
I got
meeting,
People could just, work from home. so
Because it's
everybody just
acceptance,
made
the
this
approval.
We signed up
gotta be changed.
way too many. Should've.
Yeah, it has you present, right where it has the roll call.
It was a
It don't
struggle.
have you as not doing it.
Yeah.
But
Get work.
Sam, borrow your pen.
I managed to do it. But now I'm being very picky about what I do. There's 3 boxes I gotta check off. Where they're building, what they're
Renee,
building.
I have some. Okay,
Who
yeah,
are they?
these little ones don't seem to really like
Who
paper
are
or
these
something.
people? When you get older, you don't have the patience for this.
When I was in Tampa for years, I would do several times, I said, come to my house, I said, you and your friends after a while.
Yeah, exactly.
He said, oh, no, no problem, I said, oh, yeah, don't go for your doctor, and don't go for your lawyer.
Friends, family, yeah, forget it. Oh, boy.
Yeah. We waiting on Tina? We waiting on Tina?
I don't think so. I have to move my. Keep your computer live for Tuesday.
I think she's gonna be in a little bit.
What's that?
I think Gina's gonna be in shortly,
Let's
so she said that we can.
go ahead and start. All right, call to order.
Ready?
Yes, do the pledge of allegiance.
Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do roll call, Gaston Hall.
Yep. Roll call?
Roll call. Yeah, Gaston Hall.
Yep, here.
Kathleen Atkinson. Bruce Kaufman.
Here.
John Phillips. Chuck Sanders.
Present.
Joseph Belcher. Michael Rivers. Linda Cridlem.
Present.
Roger Asper. And Donna McCandle. We have the minutes, Tina?
Can I introduce Renee?
They're attached.
Is it on that one?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
There's a change to the minutes.
That one, okay.
Okay. They showed me that I am not present. I made motions which are in the body of the minutes, so it needs to be changed. If you read down under the Board of Elections, I was here and made nominations that don't show.
You were, I remember.
Yeah, you were there.
Okay, so let's see.
So if you'll just make that change. And accept the minutes as
Okay.
changed. Sorry, yes.
No problem. Everybody in agreement with that? Approve the minutes with a change.
Aye.
Before we start, I just want to take a minute to introduce you to Renee Blevins. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. She's our new administrative assistant, and she's going to be taking care of the meetings going forward. Maylin is not with the county anymore. Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
So the next item is the county commissioners are waiving fees on sewer connections in certain parts of the county. The way I read the state statutes that we work under, that's illegal. And I sent in copies of it. Basically, it says the fees cannot be waived or lowered unless it's for everybody. So can we send a request to the Construction Commission and ask them for a ruling on that?
Sure. Yep.
I mean, that, it's just the 75,000 they took out for the consultant for the fee schedule also. That money should be still in our account, still be drawing interest on our account, should not be transferred out of our account as per state statute. Did y'all get a copy of what I sent? Okay. It's under 553.80 is the statute that it's under. And I don't think they're in compliance either with the fee schedule requires certain items under that same statute. If they want to revisit the fees, there's some requirements that they're supposed to do beforehand and have it filed in the public where the public can read it. I don't think they've created that either, so. Have y'all been contacted about that fee schedule yet, about any participation in it, or are they just gonna do it on themselves?
What's that?
The fee study will come before the board for review prior to it going to the Board of County Commissioners.
Is there gonna be any input
For
before,
adoption.
before the consultant even starts?
Excuse me?
Is there gonna be any input from us before the consultant even starts the thing, or is he just gonna come at the tail end?
I believe the fee study's already underway.
Okay. All right, if he comes in and it's against state statute, we're gonna reject the whole thing. So I know they do these things all the time without the, input from the buildings things, and it comes back all the time screwed up because they didn't have input. But as long as he's in compliance with state statute and our Citrus County ordinance, then that'd be fine. If not, mm-mm. And since they haven't done what's required to be done before you start the study, I don't see how it's gonna be right.
So we can provide that information to the people who, the commissioners requested this, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So, I mean, I could just provide that information to the commissioners.
Well, they've been told,
Oh, okay.
and they just, went ahead and took it out. But like I say, if you read state statute, that 75,000 should not be transferred out of the building account until it's needed to be spent. So it should be still in our account with interest on it. So if they move the money out, we'll be losing the interest, which is also against the state statute.
OMB takes care of all that, so I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah, and I'm not 100% positive where the monies have come from, because
They
it's
come from the-
not just the building division.
Oh, yes,
This
it is.
regarding
For this
the impact fees and stuff.
No, not the impact fees. This is for our building fee schedule, which is only the building department. The one we just redid in December. So,
yeah, I don't know. I don't have, there's no
Now-
one here from OMB.
There may be a little bit of confusion here. Now, Stephanie had brought forth before the Code Review and Appeals Board a building study that went in front, or a fee change to the building fee schedule that
That's
went in
correct.
front of the board in December.
That was done
And
correctly.
all that was some additions being added. We were not changing any. That's what went in front of the board at that time.
which I agree with.
The senior staff are involved with the current fee study that's being done. That was not brought before by the building division. So those are two separate
You still cannot have.
categories.
You cannot have a modification to the building fee schedule unless the requirements of this statute are met, which they have not been. So I'm just saying in advance, if it comes here and does not meet that thing, I won't approve it. And they've done it before where they've gone through all this stuff and never got any input from the building division. And they came through and used all criteria that is not pertinent because they had counties that were doing, not just 100% fee. They put some of the ad valorem tax in, which is a totally different animal than just 100% fee. So just put them on notice if they do that without y'all's input. I mean, you should have direct input on how that's being done and to make sure it's done correctly, but,
I don't think it's at that stage yet.
okay.
Everything that I have seen so far has had to do with OMB. So I thought, Erin is the one who's kind of overseeing that right now.
I believe so.
Yeah, so.
Any other
Is this
questions?
Is this a countywide, is this specific to a certain municipality within the county? Or
No, this is all the county,
Entire county?
no cities. Permitting software update?
We still have our go-live date of June 23rd. They actually moved it up a couple of weeks as we got into it. We meet with the seller representative twice a week, on Mondays and Thursdays for an hour. I have staff who's been testing it. Collectively, they're putting in about 25 to 30 hours a week testing the software. Looks really encouraging to me. We started off with a handful of people, staff members, training, and then we added some. And when the people who have been testing it were training the newcomers. And when I sat there and watched them, it looked like they were experts. They were just, very comfortable showing them what they were doing. We have tested it on the applicant side of the software. So they're actually creating records just like you would as contractors. And goes along pretty good. Anything that any kind of problems they find, the representatives from Acela are very responsive. They fix it in a matter of minutes. So, got a little bit of butterflies going into it, but I'm pretty comfortable with it. And we're gonna run the other software concurrently with it and just let it die out. We're not gonna try to integrate any of that information over to it. In fact, some of the bigger projects come around June, I would actually encourage them to wait until the new software is up and running before they apply, rather than applying in the old system. There might be a handful of projects that we actually manually transfer some of that information over on some of our bigger projects that are coming in, just so it resides in the software we want. But we have a handful of people who've used it before. In inspectors, plans examiners, Stephanie and I have used the system before. It's actually configured to Manatee County, the one that we helped tweak, so to speak. So lot more record types. You will not have any kind of milestones where you can't do this until you do that. Just that never made any sense to me at all, never. And the record types are a lot more, they seem to denote what the permit is. I mean, if we did a window change out here, they called it an addition, which was really ridiculous. This is called, in our world, it's gonna be a window change out. So, the permitting numbering system is very easy on the eyes. The first two letters or numbers will denote the year, the next two will denote the month, and then the last four will tell you what that sequence is for that month. So, when you create an amendment or revision, we're gonna call it, to a permit, it lives within that permit. It's not on a separate planet like this software is. So, the plan system is really neat. When you go in, they call it the plan room. You go in there and the pages will actually look like thumbnails. Let's say you have 10 thumbnails, you know, it looks just like that, a tile in there when you're in the plan room. In the bottom right-hand corner, it will name itself according to what you named it in the bottom corner. If it's S1, it's gonna name it S1. It'll also have a V1, version 1 on it. So when you address a review comment and that new plan sheet comes in, it superimposes over the other one. So you can automatically tell what got changed. It'll say V2. The software lets you view them side by side. It actually highlights the changes in the plan. It gives them a different color. So it's really, really nice. And the system is, I forget how many counties they have, but they just own Florida market. They just own it.
What's the name of it again, sir?
Acela, yeah.
How's that?
Acela, A-C-C-E-L-A. You can find a lot of information on YouTube about it. And they also have some websites. They have like once a month, they have a meeting or like a Teams meeting where anybody who wants to attend shares experiences, stuff like that. They just do this every month. They devoted some 200 hours of training for us to hands-on training, stand behind your chair kind of stuff, which is really good. That's about it. You know, we're still on track to go live here June 23rd, and that's coming up pretty soon.
That's for all commercial and residential both?
The commercial end of it is, yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, it's just very intuitive. You know, it's just, you check, if this, then that. You know, you check this box, well, that's the fork in the road. It's gonna tell you, you know, if you check, are you using private provider? Well, then the path, you know, the workflow changes right there. So, the one thing you guys are gonna have to get ahead of the curve is, you have to have your digital signature third-party approved, okay? There's no way around it. There's no workaround, nothing. That's a couple of week process, I hear. But there's companies who do that. I'd encourage you to get that in place before, you know, we go live. Your digital signature is third-party approved. And there's companies that do that.
Can you send out a list of those companies to people?
Yeah, there's one it does not accept. Do you remember? Yeah, we're gonna have to find
I
out
think
what
it's
it was.
Adobe that they have issues with. It's mainly for the architects and engineers, and if you're doing, uploading elevation certificates and surveys, if they have it.
So do they have to get certified also, or does the contractor only?
Any digital signature,
Okay.
yeah.
It's mainly for the plans, though.
So if we're, yeah,
Only for the plan. If it has a digital signature, the system will detect that and make sure it's approved. And you will not be able to submit if it doesn't have that.
So the applicant, doesn't necessarily have to be approved, signature approved, just the engineer or architect of record?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, it's to help prevent fraud
Sure.
Yeah.
for electronic signatures. That's the point behind it.
so if we submit,
But that law statute's been around for many years, you know? It's always been that, it should have been third-party approved. We didn't have the software to verify, and now we do.
so if we submit plans and just a problem with the site plan, that'll just show the site plan needs to be reviewed, it won't make the whole system review all the pages?
No.
No.
You'll put that under site plan
Right.
document, and to say it's a hand-drawn, it's not, there's not an electronic signature on there, so it's not gonna validate.
Well, no, I
it.
mean, if the building part of it is totally complete, but they have an issue with the site plan, you don't have to go back and review all the building part of it, just the one page on the site plan,
Right, that's correct. When you submit your revisions, it would go to,
just the one page only.
Correct.
yeah, that's the beauty of it. Actually, it's easier. A lot of architects and engineers will do a whole set of plans when they make a change or, you know, a revision to something, and not necessarily bubble it. So if they do it that way, it will go in as version 2 across the board, but there's actually a screen in there that's similar to Bluebeam, where it allows you to overlay, so it makes finding what changed really easy. So we still want you to put that on there, what you're correcting, but it's not a total deal killer kind of thing.
Well, it doesn't require total review from the beginning again, so just the pages that are changed.
It also detects, you know, if you change a plan sheet that we didn't have a comment on, it's gonna let us know that you did that, because that's quite a common practice on the commercial end of stuff. And beforehand, you would have to go back and compare every page, you know, all 30 sheets, one to the other, but this one will automatically show that this has changed. So it's really nice software. It's things that I spend 7, 8, 10 minutes on, I can do in 1 minute with this stuff. You take like an aluminum structure, there's not a whole lot for me to look at. You know, I'm looking at wind speed, I'm looking at the fact that it's signed and sealed. I don't care how you put it together. I can literally do one of those in about 1 minute.
And what will this change on the inspection side of it for the inspector in the field?
It's a lot more, it's not only easier, it's more accurate. It's just very, you know, the inspectors are gonna have no trouble out there. It's just accurate, is what it is. I mean, I've seen mistakes on the system here that are kind of concerning, you know, but this is it's just more accurate too. That's another plus for it. But inspectors their job's gonna get a lot easier. The inspections is integrated into the system.
And their software on their systems are good?
Yeah. The plan room it's a software that's integrated into it too. It's called ePermit Hub. And, we're gonna plan on having, training for the contractors. We'll have it upstairs, try to give it for about a week and get people in here, and you can just hands-on see how to submit.
One of the things I missed from the old system was going in the office that morning and looking to see, you know, what inspector, you know, what inspections you're gonna be, having that day in the inspector's name. The current system, you just, you know, if you made a target inspection the next week, you know, you forget unless you manually make a note. Where the old system, it was nice to be able to pull it up and you could see everything you're getting that day. Do you know if that system will produce a report like that, or,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah. You get a notification, you can set your notifications to how you want it, but every single thing that happens in that system, it's like once upon a time.
Yeah,
And every single thing that happens in there, you get a notification
yeah,
of what's going on.
You'll be able to see who's assigned to your,
nice.
yeah.
That's very nice.
It's gonna be, right now, the whole process is rather labor intensive for our inspections department, and a lot of that is gonna go away because, there's different buckets that are assigned. So you'll be able to see who gets, of course, Scott always has the ability to move things around in the morning, somebody calls in sick, so you're probably best to wait until after 7 to make sure that it's the same person. But, the system also shows a map, so they can kind of plan their route a lot better. Scott can see, where they're at on their inspections. It's much more, I guess, live time type of,
Yeah, one of the things, when I've interacted with your inspectors in the field, there's days that they're bottlenecked. There's days that they just have so many inspections to occur, and they all try to get it done that day, whereas I know in Marion County, their system, is kinda neat that when you call for inspection, the system's able to analyze that workload for that particular day, and it might assign that inspection for the day or two after you really wanted it. And I think that's really efficient for the inspectors, rather than them all being expected to do every inspection that's called for in a particular day. And us having to know that, so we don't run out and unlock a structure for them when they're not gonna be there because of the bottleneck. Do you know if the system will?
that's called capping the
Yeah.
inspections.
Yeah.
And that has the ability to do it. I think one of the things that Sam and I have seen over the years, though, is it gets too far out, and all of a sudden, everyone's freaking out because they're not getting their inspection for 4 days. So we gotta be careful with that. It's, that's more of a Scott overseeing how the inspections are flowing. So,
We've gone from 7 to 12 inspectors, so the thing about that is, though, their volume is about the same. A good day, I think, is about 30 inspections, especially when you got it. One thing to keep in mind is the number of stops you have. So you might have 30 inspections, but 2 or 3 are at one location, which makes for a good day. So the inspectors have gotten update on their fleet. These guys were driving unreliable trucks. Back in the day, 12, 15-year-old trucks, it was embarrassing. We've got almost a whole new fleet. Almost everything is 1 or 2 years old. So looking a lot better for them. We're offering same-day inspections too, if you get in a bind.
Will it be integrated with other departments?
Eventually.
current
This is
system
phase 1, where we're gonna have
building.
just the building division, the plans examiners, inspectors, and permit techs. But eventually, yes, the other departments will be on board with it.
So site plan review, will have to wait till they get done with it before we can see it.
What's that?
Site plan review,
For planning? Yeah, they're in phase 2,
they're in phase 2.
yeah. So theirs will continue as it is.
So when you have the people that are reviewing the plans that do both in here, so they'll only be able to do the building portion of it first before they're waiting on planning, or,
No, they'll run concurrently.
but you
The
can't see?
reviews,
Yeah, but can you see that in the new system, or is that not gonna be?
They'll just be using both of the systems. That's our non-res team. They have they're very unique. I have to say, I've never seen that in the building department before, but it actually works out really well. So, yeah, they'll be tracking as usual. They're just gonna have to do it in the other system until planning ends up on board.
Will we be submitting in both systems? I mean, like the site part will go into the old system until they transfer over, or it'll all go into SL? Or are we sure?
I might have to check on that for
Okay.
you, because they deal with that stuff on a day-to-day basis, but, I know that we're doing a site plan application, but I think that's more for like a parking lot or something that, right, Sam, am I?
yes.
Yeah. So we can get back with you if you want on that
Sure.
answer.
So is the system track when you submit the plans to the other divisions? You've got a timeline there, Is that system gonna track the timeline for the other ones too?
Yes.
So
We
when
have
when we
to.
hit the 10-day mark, then if you don't have any comments back, then we're gonna start running into the issues for the 30-day mark?
It depends on the permit type. You know, the state statutes are the ones who govern the timeframes. But what we're gonna have to do on the new permits is we're gonna have the other departments have a sign-in. So they'll be able to do the reviews for what's on the building permit. You know, so you submit as normal, they'll do their review, make their comments. Sella is set up the same way as Infor. You will get your comments, but you will not be able to submit documents until the review cycle is complete. And that's so that way we don't have documents shooting in here and there, and it'll just make a mess.
So they got a timeline for y'all to say if the plans are complete or not, and they have a timeline for the other divisions to submit back to you,
Yes.
and a timeline to submit the permit, whether they've answered or not.
Yes.
The statute requires that we respond within that 30 days. So if I give building comments to them and other departments are, taking longer than the 30 days, I think I've met my obligation.
I think one of our biggest challenges as a building department is every year, and I'm not kidding, every year, they're messing with the legislation on timeframes and this and that, and some of the stuff they've got proposed up there right now is kind of scary. So,
Well, even currently, what's in the, 553.80, there's some pretty tight timeframes in there, not just for y'all, but for the other divisions. I mean, technically, at the end of 30 days, if you're fine with all the building plans and nobody submitted any comments, you're supposed to issue.
Yeah. I mean, people think it's, they think it's just the building department, it's us. But it's all these other entities, all these other divisions that have to
We used to-
look at site plans and utilities and engineering and all that kind of stuff.
Before
It's
this system y'all currently had, they used to be able to go up there and see all the different divisions, when they got the stuff and any comments there, so you could just point to the people and say, no, it's not building, they signed off 2 weeks ago, it's,
Yeah.
this one or this one.
No, my staff is 2 to 3 days at the most,
Oh, I know. It's not your issue. It's,
well, and that's one of the things that we've come across with some of the master plans and the private provider for plan review and inspections. They give us 12 business days on master plan and 10 on the private provider for plan review and inspections. So it's not even, that really is not us. Our work is done in theory, right? They're submitting for the permit, it's just site specific. The plan reviews have already been done for the floor building code portion. So basically, it's gonna get to the point where if the other departments can't hit that mark, they're gonna have to get those pre-approved before they can submit. So that was, I think, one of the things that Sam was talking about with the pre-check. Because there are some timeframes that are just unrealistic for other departments, and the building department by statute will be penalized for things that are just completely out of our wheelhouse.
Or you can issue a permit without their comments.
Yeah, so that's a work in progress. This is an art.
I didn't see anything, the current legislation or the ones proposed, I didn't see anything there where you could submit to all the other divisions first and then hold the building department back so you can meet those timeframes. Is there any criteria that
we
allows you to do
discussed
that?
it, but it wasn't,
I know we discussed it, but I mean, I went through the state statutes to find out where that's authorized to do, but I didn't see it in there.
yeah.
It will definitely delay the permitting process, but that's the way it has to be.
Well, not according to this. I mean, it's
Why not? I'm
proposed,
just
it's
saying,
not,
if they propose, the other departments get 10 days before they look at it, that's definitely, we already know now it's 10 days no matter what. But then if we do 10 days and then then maybe you're only 2 or 3 days more, but it would just delay it a little bit. If we could submit that stuff first, or submit it prior to the building, I mean, not that we don't have it all, but I mean, the sooner I can get a site plan in and that stuff, then if we're still waiting on plans or something, that would alleviate a little bit of time, but.
There are a couple other jurisdictions throughout the state that are using that pre-check system, and they have had really good luck with it. It seems to be working well, and it really kind of puts the spotlight on the ones who are taking longer, So it's my understanding, we're gonna have some changes too with the health department, right? They're going So,
They're gonna be what?
DEP. So, we have no idea how that's gonna impact any of this stuff.
Well, I've been on DEP for a while. I sat on the state board that reviewed all that stuff, and also that I was a appeals board. And they've been moving to DEP for a long time. They started off with other stuff. Now I guess they're down to septic tanks.
Yes. And they'll be taking that over, I believe, in June, July.
Yeah, 'cause
So we're not quite sure how that's gonna mesh with the permitting area, or if they'll have a office
That's why I say it's
per
all-
each county, or a office that serves multiple counties. And if they have an office that serves multiple counties with limited staff, that's gonna take a little bit longer for individuals to get their septic approvals and permits.
Because they've done away with that appeals board now for the septic tanks under the old health department, because DEP took it over, so there's,
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, we can, that has to be taken care of, obviously, before we can
issue.
seal the house, right?
Seal the house.
So even if they've got it in works, but we recently came across an issue where there was 2 different site plans on a commercial project, and it really messed them up, because I think the septic, going by my memory, but I think the septic ended up being in a right-of-way, so then it had to get moved, and everything was routed to where it was shown on the plans. So that's the problem with stuff kind of being out floating around in different departments, is that not necessarily everybody sees it to be able to catch another issue.
Under the
So-
new, under the new system, they will be able to, right?
What is it?
Correct, yeah.
So-
Yeah, they actually ended up with, they took the wrong site plan to the job site, is what happened, Well, that shouldn't happen. The system should not allow you to do that, but it did. Very costly to the people,
Oh, yeah.
That's, so when you submit a new set of plans, it goes on top of the other ones. Goes right on top, and there's no way to print the other sheets. System won't let you. It'll only print the sheets that are on top.
The problem is, you send those plans out for bid, and then you get comments that you have to change, and
Yeah.
sometimes the people that sent them the bid in already, they don't get the new changes.
Right. And I try to get the people in the habit of only submitting the revised sheets, too. Because if I go back in there and I see that every sheet is changed, well, I gotta review it again.
Right.
I gotta review it again, see what, I gotta look at the whole set of plans. Whereas if they just revise, the sheets that I asked for, makes it a lot more efficient on my end.
And a lot cheaper for them to do it too, because they're only doing a couple pages versus huge stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to my next comment. I've had a couple developers concerned because they're doing a lot of development work, 150 lots, 200 lots, and they're saying they can't have a construction trailer on the site. Well, that's crazy, because if you don't have a construction trailer, it's just like a commercial job, or it's even bigger than a commercial job when you start to develop multiple lots. And then a builder might come in and they're gonna build from one end to the other, or they're gonna complete the whole section that they're doing, telling them they can't have a construction trailer either.
Who's saying
Who's
that?
saying that?
The, I guess, planning, somebody is.
Yeah, that's outside of our wheelhouse. We go under Florida Building Code, section 102.2 building, under the exemptions, mobile or modular structures used as temporary trailers, except that for provisions of Part 2, which has to do with the accessibility. They're exempt from
But-
us.
But can you hook power up to them?
That's what we would permit, the electric.
Just the power?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but they don't require a permit, construction permit.
I guess the big issue was they're not being able to get power, and I said, well, that doesn't make any sense to me, but,
They have to be a temp power pole.
yeah.
Right,
So this would, electrician would just come and get a permit for it, put it in, hook the trailer up to it, and get it inspected?
mm-hmm.
Question, new member here. Would this be the committee or the board that would perhaps invite some of these other department heads when we have an issue, a coordination issue, or is that need to take place under another, guess, and you've been around a long time. I mean, I see almost every permit, there's conflicts, not with building at all. I love you guys. But there's,
Technical services.
well, it's planning and it's utilities and it's these other departments that, quite honestly, I have to actually walk, old school, walk each other to hold hands to get something done. And, you know, it shouldn't be that way. You know, this is 2025. Things should be coordinated internally, digitally, computerized, to where one department knows exactly what's going on. And I'm wondering if this board is the place to perhaps have a guest, you know, come in and appear, you know, and say, look, this is an issue we're having with your particular department. We want to try to work this out. I just don't know if this board is the facility to facilitate that. But I do think there's a need, you know, especially when a project's getting towards the end and we're all seeking that CO. That's a huge thing. That is just, it's everything. And, you know, banks are wanting it, owners are wanting it, you know, we're wanting it. I mean, there's so many people, but yet we find, I do at least, almost every single job I have to hand, you know what I'm saying, put the parties together to say, okay, and it usually exists, okay, whatever we're trying to accomplish is done or whatever. It's just a matter of nobody's communicating with each other under this roof. I just think that if they heard that from a group, a particular department head heard, say, look, this is an issue, you've got to kind of do some handshaking here on this. I don't know if this is the board to facilitate those kind of things.
Are you referring to residential projects or commercial?
Well, I think it would apply to both. I do
Oh.
mostly residential.
You do mostly residential, right?
But I do some light commercial here and there, and I find it pretty much the same. But one example is state health, you know, the final septic, you know, inspection. We used to never have that. It was just a field inspection and it was done. But now there's all of a sudden there's this final inspection that, for the lack of me, I don't know why they have to do that. Maybe it's a water line issue, but when the field inspection takes place, when it's installed, obviously they should be able to say, hey, look, the water line is where it is. It's not gonna interfere, and it seems like we have to hold that hand every time. The other is utilities. I don't understand why a utility department has to go out and look at a water meter that's been installed for months and months.
You paying the bills on it.
And you
I
know,
actually offered to have our plumbing inspectors look at it.
yeah, I mean,
And I said, well, what are you looking for? And they said, to make sure it's level. Mine's at about a 30-degree angle.
yeah, and that will hold up a CO.
Both of them, out at the right-of-way and at my house. The thing's tilted
Yeah,
like that. And that was a no-go.
Yeah,
I
that
said, my
sing-
guys, they're plumbing inspectors, let them look at the meter.
Your guys are more qualified, I think, to look at it than, not taking anything away from the utility department,
Yeah.
but your certified plumbing inspectors should be able to do that. But these are the little things that I think if a department head could come in, and I don't know if this is the meeting to facilitate that coordination, but I think that something internally could happen to get some of these departments to do some handshaking to where it makes our world a little bit easier.
We have been holding meetings at the builders. We had Public Works in, Technical Services, all those people about a month ago now. So there's like 7 people there from Public Works, all the way from the director down, and they just flat said they don't have enough staff. Technical Services is taking up so much now, they're doing all these inspections for all these different requirements, and they just said they don't have the staff to do it. So we've been trying to pass that along, that, you know, you can't throw all this stuff on one division and then not give them any staff to handle it.
I mean, there used to be a water line. I remember the day when there was a water line inspection from the meter to the house, and,
Yep.
you know, that went away. But while your inspector's there, I mean, Sam's agreed to take that on. I had conversations about that, and they just, it's kind of like, we're too busy, but we don't want to give up anything. It's a kind of an oxymoron, but, yeah, I would like for us, the board, to maybe if we can, if they would come in and address some of this stuff, so the department heads see what we're up against, and maybe they can go back. It's a simple thing. It's nothing difficult about these things.
No, I don't. I gotta bite my tongue, but I don't understand a 10-day,
Yeah.
having 10 days to do anything. You know, it's, I would say,
Well, I'm like,
it's
Bruce,
the
what they're
same
gonna do,
amount of work.
they're gonna set
to-
their calendar, when they get
They
that,
do.
if they've got 10 days, they're gonna set their calendar at 10 days.
That's a fact. I mean,
That's- that's what
I
they
can show
do.
you every one of mine, 10 days. to the day.
And if you can do it in 5, then, you know, I mean, things are kind of slower now. I know you'll never hear that from anybody. Oh, no, it's the busiest it's ever been. But the economy is down right now, and they should have quicker than review than 10 days, right? The other thing recently that's come up that and I just learned about this, is that a pool builder that pulls a pool permit alongside of our GC permit, when they go to get a final, at that stage, many times the house has already had a CO, right? The house has been inspected, it's done, but yet the inspector, and in some cases, the owner is close to taking occupancy, the inspector for the pool, final electric, has to access the electric panel. For what reason, I don't know. Your guys have already looked at the panel, we got a pool circuit, it's safe to the back pool equipment, but the pool inspector has to, whoever's inspecting the pool electric has to gain access back into the home to look at the panel. For what reason, I don't know. They've already looked at it once, you know, when they did the final house inspection. And that's something that sometimes is a little bit of a snafu that I think could be done, and maybe perhaps the permits are linked. They do the final house inspection, hey, look, I've already looked at the panel, let's go ahead and log in and let this pool permit know that it's from an electrical stamp. I know they gotta look at the equipment hookup, but as far as getting back into the house to the panel, maybe they could sign off on that.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Especially if there's an outside disconnect too, why would they have to go back to the main panel? Because y'all should pick up all the way to the disconnect on the outside for the pool equipment.
Okay.
Just to put on record, the CRAB is the Code Review and Appeals Board under section 18.6, and the Code Review and Appeals Board shall have the following duties and powers. The Code Review and Appeal Board shall serve as the local construction regulation board in accordance with Florida Statute 489 in reviewing any locally proposed technical amendments to building standards or regulations and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners regarding the same. Hear appeals of code interpretations by the building director and/or building official and render final decisions. And review and make recommendations to the Citrus County Board of County Commissioners on any changes to this chapter of the code under its jurisdiction. That's referring to section 18, where the Code of Ordinances is. So I think a lot of those have been meetings that we've done here at the county. So if you need us to set up, you know, some meetings, we can do that, but it's probably going to be in a meeting room versus in front of the board.
Hurricane damage update?
So we have roughly 500 permits so far. Those are in various stages of demolition, reconstruction, new houses, replacement mobile homes, replacement modular homes. Some of those are just mechanical electric permits where we've notified them that you still have to pull a permit. That's been a issue that we ran into, is just a lot of people don't know. I grew up in the county. I've lived here my whole life. I was born in Citrus Memorial before it was HCA, so I've always been aware that, you know, we have a coastal area that floods, but we have these people that move here from out of state, a lot of people from up north, a lot of people from out west, and they don't realize that living in some instances 50 feet away from the Gulf of Mexico on a slab-on-grade house, that's a flooding concern. So we've made this is Morgan. I should have started
Hi.
with this. This is the new flood management specialist. Hopefully she will become a floodplain specialist, because we can't manage the flood. We can only manage the floodplain. So hopefully she will get her title changed to that. But we've made a concerted effort to bring in owner builders. I know that people are having a hard time finding contractors to do the work. And we will, as far as flood goes, there's an overlap of federal requirements that are in our local ordinance and a building overlap. If you're replacing your mechanical, your electrical and all that, that's all building code. But if it's getting into flooring and things like that, that's not really building code related. So because we're housed under building, we're gonna treat it the same way that building treats it. Everything that I've figured, everything that we've worked on is highly discussed between Stephanie and Sam, myself, other CFMs in our division. So we're trying to educate in the midst of these repair permits, trying to help people out as much as they can, because we have the federal government and we have the state, both with a looking glass, making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And luckily, the last meeting we had with FEMA apparently went well, because they said we had no significant deficiencies, and it's their way of saying that we don't have to worry about you. So keep doing what you're doing and you'll be fine. It's also taught us what's the word I'm looking for? The assessments that we conducted back in October, November, and even into December, those have been undeniably helpful in working these things out. I'm sure that there's been a couple of frustrated contractors when we tell them, I can't approve your current flood review for window and door change out when I know you had 2 to 3 feet of water in your house. You have to address that. And really, it just also comes down to safety concerns. If you had saltwater intrusion into electrical, that's not a good day, not a good idea. So, we've been working with them. Of course, the free permits go away today. I believe, is it at the end of the day, or?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Tomorrow will be.
That's been kind of I understand what you're trying to do there by waiving permit fees, but that, to me, should not have been extended to HOAs that are receiving $1,000 a month from their, the people who reside there. Another thing I'd like to point out is FEMA is really, really involved. They've come to this office in the not even 2 years I've been here, more times than I've seen them in 20. I don't know what's going on, but they're getting very involved, and it's not an easy task what Dawson does there. Keeping, they have the ability to take away your national flood, kick you out of the program. That happened to which county was it?
Lee County, right?
City of Cape Coral is
Yeah,
on
they actually
suspension.
kicked them out of the program, and very difficult to get back in. But what they do, we're a 5 is a community rating.
Yes, we're within the community rating system, we're currently a class 5. There's a lot of things that I've been working on, Morgan's been working on, that we're trying to. FEMA was very, very vocal about minimum enforcement. So our ordinance, from my understanding, is a slightly modified version of the model state ordinance for floodplain management that came out in, I believe, 2013 or 2014. And it has not had the attention or the updates that it's needed to be effective. Building code in many ways has more higher standards than our floodplain ordinance does for floodplain development. So as we're combing through and going through these storm damage permits and all these different opportunities come up to review our ordinance, I'm finding deficiencies with it where some things just need to be explained better. Some things need a reference. There's a definition. We have what's considered, it's a coastal A zones. Anyone that's built over in way west, we're talking into Ozello or into Fort Island, you've got that CAS flood zone. But the problem is that our ordinance doesn't even have coastal A zone defined in it, but it's defined in building code, and there's more stringent development criteria in building code. So, yes, ma'am.
With that explained, why in Dixie Shores, there are several people that I've spoken to because they want to get out of where they are. But there's certain things they can do, and the neighbors go ahead and do it. There's no consistency in there.
Right. Some of it comes down to when the structures were built too, and that's where the storm damage repair permits have gotten complicated. Is we have it's the 50% rule. Everyone's heard of it. It's in our ordinance.
But
It-
it's not enforced.
It is very much so enforced right now, very much so.
Well,
The problem is if they don't get a permit, then we can't,
all right, so if the owner goes in and does all the repairs themselves, they don't need a permit.
they absolutely
They
do.
absolutely
And they
do.
have to
But they're
draft an
doing
estimate.
it without permits.
They're
And
not
that's,
allowed
That's a
to
separate
by
Exactly.
statute to pull
I
an order
understand
builder.
that, so in my position, do I say, hey, look, they've done all this repair work with no permits? Because I go to pull it up and there's no permit for it. Do I become the name caller? I don't really wanna put myself in that position, but there are places out there, there's two in particular that I know, that are no permits for the internal renovations that they've done.
Well, we've been working through some of that and we're watching, what's going on down there. Number one, they're a condo. There's more than 3 units. Most of those are, 4 to 7, and sometimes they're 2-story buildings. They have to get a contractor do the work. They can't do it as an owner builder by statute.
I
Additionally,
understand that.
additionally.
They don't.
Okay, but additionally, if they're trying to sell the property, right, they have to fill out the disclosure. They should be filling out the flood disclosure.
I think it's 68302 is the statute, I think.
They can fill out the
So-
flood disclosure that the unit has been flooded,
Mhm.
but there's no permits to show
Right,
that the renovation has been done by a contractor.
yep, and that's gonna be an issue for if they're getting a loan. They wanna see that the stuff has been properly permitted. You would not believe the amount of people who come in to do after-the-fact permits because someone's going through the motions of getting a loan and the bank has
Requires it.
found this or that, and they have to, yeah. So, if you know that they're not and they are supposed to, now it puts you in a position because of
Yes, it
disclosure.
does.
Yeah.
Is there a sunset on this permit fee waiving their permit fees? Is that gonna sunset?
Today.
Today.
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah, it's been
Good.
about 6 months.
Good.
Under Florida statute 553.7922, local government expedited approval of certain permits following a state of emergency. This is how they waive the fees. But they
So if I
put in a
put a
90-day.
blank letter in the mail with no return address, hand printed, with the 2 addresses,
Mhm.
that'll take me off the hook.
We're going through the list down there. We need to pull and see how many have not pulled for permits.
I've got a whole running list of those.
Because we need to get code enforcement out there to deal with this. We really do.
And that's the magnitude and the volume of how many homes were flooded. Severities across the areas, we figured there was 2 to 3 feet when we were out there doing those assessments. Pretty much 2 to 3 feet equates to less than a foot or right at a foot inside the house. Those aren't situations where that substantial is gonna be met that I've found unless they're doing gold-plated countertops or something like that. But the ones that are, get a little bit more difficult are those ones that we know they had 3 to 7 feet inside of the building, or they've completely gutted the interior. I'm not gonna name the contractor, but we had an instance where someone wanted to do an entire floor remodel. Well, put them over the 50% rule by about 15%. I'm like, you can do this on one permit, but you can't tell me, you can't drop your price $25,000 on a resubmittal. You told me initially it's $260, now it's $225, $220, it doesn't jive. You just repair it, come back in a year. Because it's just,
It actually states to be returned to pre-damage condition.
yes.
So what happens when the water gets above the electrical outlets? Is that another criteria that you?
Yes, so there's the 2 different assessments. There's the preliminary, which is the one we do to get the disaster assistance, either individual and public, and then we have a substantial damage assessment. I've spoken extensively with the state and FEMA about that process. It's a very opinion-based process. It serves to just basically create hey, we think you might be damaged. I've spoken extensively with Sam and Stephanie about what we may do to streamline that process, because the biggest thing for us is code enforcement. If we're gonna be out there looking at properties that flooded, wouldn't it be better to leave a door hanger or notify someone that's there, you guys gotta get permits? The process that FEMA looks at, the process that they want us to enforce, because it's a nationally administered program, it doesn't always, their ideas don't always fit communities need, let alone the state needs. Our flood zones that we have are drastically different than ones that are even in the same state. We have areas that, Ozello, Fort Island, Old Homosassa, everything west of 19, it's all wetlands. And I've had multiple different floodplain administrators with far more experience than myself look at our maps and go, what's going on out there? And it's a coastal marsh. It's kind of one of a kind in our state. So with the flooding damages, everything that's been going on, the people that have been coming in, I'm not bragging, I am proud of it, I'm not bragging. We have gotten a couple of compliments over how we conduct ourselves specifically with the owner builders. The whole idea is to just get the documentation that we need on these repairs to appease FEMA and to appease whatever they're looking for, their minimum requirements.
The owners can only do their primary residence. If it's a rental property or something, they have to get a contractor.
If it's
Uh,
under an LLC.
Yes.
We've had really successful meeting with the realtors too. And that's a good group of people to have flood talks with. And they've actually requested another meeting here coming up.
Their whole association.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we met for like an hour and a half, and they just, that's a good group of people to know, understand, what needs to happen. We're also getting some software that's gonna help a whole lot with administering the FEMA regulations. That's what the software that's what it's designed for.
So what are you looking for an update to the ordinance?
So, with the increase in private providers, there's a slight concern over whether we can enforce our floodplain ordinance. Some of the, obviously the aspects of construction for a building are met in a building permit. I mean, it has to meet building codes, so design professionals are gonna be looking at it for that purpose. I've already found in instances where a private provider's completing the plan review that there are deficiencies with their private provider reviewed plans that do not meet the intent or criteria of the floodplain regulations, whether it's in building code or the minimum standards or just our local ordinance. So one of the things we're looking to do, if you guys are good with me kind of throwing that out there, we want to take building code and mirror it in the ordinance so that we can always make sure that the floodplain requirements are enforced. That's the generalized idea.
And are you looking at extending the time frame now from storm to storm, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year?
Looking at it, not very minimum on that.
Does it help lower the number from 5 to 4?
It does. Part of the issue is, and I don't understand where it's, CRS is administered by National Flood Insurance, so it's this, our CRS auditor, we get minimal points for the higher standards that are in building code. Even though we have to enforce those and we review to those standards, if it's not in the ordinance, then they don't like to acknowledge it for points. Even if, like, I literally copied and pasted all of the flood provisions of building code and stuck them in our report to ISO for our cycle verification. And she's like, oh, it's all in building code, so it's like 50 points. And I'm like, yeah, but another county or another community outside of Florida that has all the same regulations in their ordinance are gonna get significantly higher points. Like, we already have to enforce it, so why do we need it in the ordinance? Which we found a reason to have it in there, because if we get expelled from NFIP because of deficiencies that we weren't able to see on the plans or in the field, then
Hypothetically, we are in
hypothetically,
good standing with them.
Yes.
But hypothetically, if that were to happen in the future.
then getting expelled from the program, all the grant programs, everything that we have going, including disaster relief, just gets thrown out the window. So it's more of a self-preservation and just cleaning things up. I mean, we lack definitions that counties around us have. Our floodplain's not even defined, so theoretically, as a floodplain administrator, I'm the administrator of nothing if you look at our ordinance.
Are we doing storm to storm now? So if I get a storm in June and I get another one in August, they're counted separately?
Yes,
If
currently
we
that is.
combine it, like any storm within 1 year or 2 years or whatever, will that help us on the number there?
If we did a cumulative and look back, it would help us point-wise, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it would help our building code rating, our BSEGS rating, if we have a higher rating in the NFIP. I'm looking at it from we get higher regulatory standards that fit into about 20 different element criterias, And it's not just building related. Some of it can come down to just development related. One of the things in looking at the ordinance and looking at old paperwork that we have a requirement for fill. If you're using structural fill, it basically has to be designed and has to be engineered if it's in the floodplain. And when you start looking at the requirement for having that on the site plan, and then you look at the intent behind it, if it's all 207, Section 18, 207, Section 18, 199, the intent is to get the developer or the owner who is building this property to get a letter of map amendment, so you don't have to pay for flood insurance. The lack of enforcement on that in prior years means that there's a bunch of people that could go through that process, submit that documentation from a registered professional, and not have to ever worry about the $5,000 to $10,000 a year flood insurance premium, because their house is removed, so there's no requirement for flood insurance at that point. So there's things like that that we're looking to clarify, because as it exists in the standard, it doesn't reference anything. But we've got the little blue book, ASC 24, and there is 2.4 is the fill requirements. So there's things like that that we're wanting to change, not so much make a higher standard or restrict, just clarify, clean it up, what we're already enforcing, put it in one cohesive place. That way, if a builder comes in, whether local or out of county, say, well, if you're gonna develop this property, here you go. Everything you need is in one place. With the storms, however, we've looked into existing requirements, and those, we have a meeting set up, just internal, to go over everything next Tuesday. One of the biggest concerns, especially since I personally was out there looking at houses, there are a lot of existing homes that were built before we had a defined floodplain that there's no question about it. There's no idea how long those are gonna continue being able to get flooded at the severity that they've been getting flooded over the last couple of years until there's a massive issue. Part of the intent of NFIP is to protect a property owner's investment. That's why even whenever we do these 50% rule estimates and we assist them with drafting these, they have to account for their labor, because their time's worth something. Their time is worth it, even if there's not a dollar value applied because they're not getting paid, it's still worth something. It's their home. So there are ideas, they're solely ideas right now, but there has to be some amount of existing provisions to, if you're after the floodplain, there's leeway. If you're before it and we know you've been flooded multiple times, do you really wanna do that $100,000 addition to your house? Just because it makes you fall at 40%, it's gonna get flooded again. You got flooded last year, you got flooded 2 years ago, you got flooded 6 years ago. It's just gonna increase the amount of money that they're having to expend when the goal is go up, at least for residential. Currently, there's no, and FEMA will not budge on this, there's no flood proofing that would be considered compliance for residential properties, only not res. Which, funny enough, we do have a couple of those projects, and they're flood-proofing Walmart in Homosassa, and the old bowling alley, Neffers. They're in the process of trying to get that flood-proofed as well.
I flood-proofed one over in Crystal River years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one was
Existing
that?
building, the old Taylor rental, right next to it.
Okay,
We went through and tore the inside walls out, we poured full of concrete, did all that stuff, did the steel plates in it,
yeah.
all the stuff we had to do and met the criteria there.
That's unincorporated, right? That's not
That's it.
Crystal River city limits, right?
That one is in the county.
City.
Good.
Hotel, Bay Area's on the other side. You got Blackshear's Bay Area.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I'll have to look up that permit, because we were looking for them to see, because at this point, it's been a lot of breaking down ASC 24, trying to get that into a more coherent format, because it's written a little bit more complicated than code, honestly. I appreciate the building code requirements, they're a little bit more clear, whereas ASC is like, it's almost one of those draw the line kind of graphs where you have to pinpoint 5 different sections to get to the intent based on the project. So it's been, things are going better. We have outreach planned, pretty extensive outreach if we can facilitate it. Our website is about to get a massive overhaul for flood. And when I mean massive, I mean everything is changing. Forerunner's the software, Pasco uses it, Pinellas uses it, I think Hernando County uses it. I know for a fact Polk County has it. It just creates a place where you can search an address and you can see all the flood zone information. If we have an elevation certificate, it's gonna be in there. You get your flood hazard information. We're getting with Forerunner to make it look like how we use our GIS maps, so you can see your existing grade elevations in comparison to your average sea level. I'm also getting with Forerunner to see if they can do a mock-up template where anyone can access development requirements for the property based off, is it existing, is it undeveloped? That way, yes, we're always gonna be there to provide that information and explain it to people that need it, but to the people that have a little bit more experience, they can go in and pull it and say, okay, I know exactly what they need here. Certain flood forms that are required, we're trying to get those into Forerunner so that you can extract it with the flood information already on it. All you have to do is complete, fill in the dots, and
As in our V-Zones
Yeah.
design certificates and certain
Yes.
things applicable to that.
And we've got
flood
it
zone.
defined where it's just flood and then flood plus wave action. Do we have a break line there?
For the
Yes.
Lomar, yes.
Yes. We're working with them because a lot of our community, most people in our community that are familiar with it, which is not many, but most of them understand the coastal A zone is CAS. That's what we
Define it.
call it. Other counties just say it's a coastal A zone, and it's just a black line on the map that says AE. That's confusing. It confused me when I first got into flood. It didn't make sense. If FEMA wants this to be a regulated flood zone, just update it and call it something other than AE, because it's at risk for storm surge, but that's federal, and you're getting in the
We have
weeds on that.
requested Forerunner do a specific definite, delineation on the
Yes.
map to show even a color difference,
Yes,
hopefully a name difference, or they can
Yeah.
at least put in parentheses CAZ next
Yep.
to coastal A zone. We need that differentiated on the map, otherwise it's gonna be confusing to anybody, builders or homeowner builders, so.
Yeah.
The delineation needs to be there between AE and coastal AE, and a squiggly line, the Lomar, is not gonna define it for anybody that's not familiar with mapping.
especially considering that, and this is according even to this, when the state looked at it, because we work with FDEM quite a bit on, we'll talk to Sam and Stephanie if we're not collectively sure that this is the right approach, then we take it to the state, and the state confirms for us. We have a couple of really, really good contacts with FDEM that have been incredibly helpful between, is Jeremy Odell, who's the one that did the preliminary damage assessment for us?
Jeremy?
Yeah. Jeremy Odell was phenomenal. He taught a class about how to do the prelim to get the disaster assistance. And then our main two are Michael Berschetti and Scott Gaines. Those are the two we've worked with back and forth, and they're all in floodplain management up there. So when the website does go live, which it's in tow right now, it'll probably be going around the time that the
Acela launch?
Acela launch. We just took an approach to try and make
User-friendly.
very user-friendly.
Right now, it's very dry FEMA reading.
Yes. Instead, it's like,
It needs to be more relatable and easily
Yes.
accessible to the public, aside from anybody that's in the construction industry. The public needs to be
Yeah.
aware of that. Realtors need to be aware of that.
Yep.
They're the ones getting the first questions, specifically when it
Oh,
comes
yeah.
to flood.
yes,
And they need to be able to understand it and
Yes.
comprehend it and be able to break it down to their clients on whatever level their client can comprehend, whether they have a good, understanding of flood or they need a basic breakdown. It needs to be,
I have another question. When a permit comes in for the renovation of like Dixie Shores, why don't they make them do all the electrical 4 foot up?
that is actually, as in FEMA P348, it talks about protecting building utilities. We don't have it in our ordinance to enforce
Enforce
it.
that.
It's the same thing, Pasco County and a couple other counties require damage photos. FEMA cannot provide me a legal reference within my own ordinance or within their bulletins where I can require those kinds of photos.
Because that seems to be the biggest hangup is
Right.
the electrical and the plumbing. And there is no reason why the electrical can't be 3 feet up around the whole unit.
May I
Yeah.
interject? There's the flood, but there's also the Florida Building Code and EC. So they can't violate those in order to,
Right, but if a house is being built handicap accessible, the outlets.
There's
and-
still the code that it can't be more than 18 inches off the floor, right?
And there's a code for that, and the switches also have a different code for handicap. But you have to define all that and say that's what you're doing, you're building for.
Yeah, so that's it. It's not just for flood. It has to also meet the requirements of NEC building in floor building code. I want to add two things while I have a second. One, regarding those units that we were talking about, the islands. We did allow, if the contractor was doing the entire building, to pull it under one permit. So if you have some addresses you're not sure of, if you will let us know, we can look to see if it's covered under
The-
like a one building permit.
Okay.
Okay? I thought
Yeah,
about that.
because they are duplexes.
Yep. Yeah, so if you would just get with us and we'll let you know, we can verify that for you.
Okay.
And then secondly.
Well, I can check on them, and if I see it there, then it's,
You just need to know what building number, I think, what did we do, the addresses, I think we did under the main parcel.
Yes.
Which
Main
I did,
parcel.
because those are ownership stuff, and I don't wanna get into that on the board, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah.
But there's stuff
all
that's
right, if there were
considered,
group permits, then that's what we have to know that.
yes, exactly.
You know,
So, please.
but I will
let us
check
know.
them.
Yes, and like I said, if you don't see it, let us know, we'll look and make sure that it was. The other thing that I wanted to throw out there, I don't think it's made a lot of traction yet, but there is, it's a Senate bill, 838. They're trying to prohibit, they call it a look back, which is cumulative. So, there's things that, if we put it in our ordinance, and the state comes along and they do something up in Tallahassee, that's the top of the pyramid. That's where we have to follow, so.
So are they saying they want to have, like we had hurricanes just a couple of weeks apart, we have to count them separately, or are they?
Yeah, well, we're doing it that way anyway, but there are other communities that have anywhere from a 1 year to a 5 year. They're calling it look back, but it's actually the cumulative of where it's tracked.
It will
They're
push a
trying
lot of
to
people
stop
over that
that.
50.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know when they first wrote it, I was here, and they tried to do 1 year, but they had 3 commissioners that wouldn't do it, so they took the 1 year out, now it's just week to week, I guess,
Yeah.
day to day.
Yeah,
The ordinance was never actually, it was never actually updated. The definition was updated, but the enforcement procedure wasn't, so it says, it actually references look back currently, but when you go to the definition, it just says basically case by case basis.
Yeah, they jerked all that stuff out,
Right,
yeah.
and that's where we're dealing, like, in January of 2021, we had a study that we had got a coastal, and we got our limited moderate wave action for the surge line, but the ordinance was never updated to reflect that. So we don't even have limited moderate wave action defined in our ordinance, we don't have coastal A zone defined in our ordinance, floodplain's not defined, wetlands not defined.
The building
and-
division was using it back a few.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why, and I will completely discuss this. There was a requirement saying that, oh, you have to bury your propane tanks in coastal A zones. That's what prior flood administrator was saying. No, that's not what the ordinance says. It says V zones. If it's in a velocity zone, it must be buried. If you want to be able to enforce it in a coastal A zone, then it has to say coastal A zone. Same way that building code is drafted with, it delineates, because you can have a stem wall in a coastal A zone, even though that'd be about a 10-foot tall stem wall in some places. But the language is what matters, and we can't enforce it if it's not in the ordinance. And that's something that we've been able to discuss with FEMA, and they have been able to provide us some amount
building
of
code addresses
reference.
that though.
Above ground in R3, whatever tanks is in R322-3, it goes into, if they're above ground, they have to be anchored. If they're below ground, they have to be anchored. Frankly, it would probably be safer if in both CAS and VE they were buried, but if it's not in the ordinance, then I can't enforce it, we can't enforce it. So those are proposed changes where, yes, we want to bring that in, not back, because it hasn't existed, but just trying to, the whole goal is to make things easier, especially with these repair permits, the amount of people that have come in and the heartbreak and the frustration, and it's like, the tone is not in our favor when they get there. What we've been finding is, in the situations where it's not a problem, or they don't have to worry about additional cost to bring the building up, it's a good meeting. The ones where we, like, unfortunately, you're gonna have to bring this up, and that's where it gets a little more cagey in terms of reaction from either homeowners or contractors, or mainly homeowners. And if you're told you gotta elevate your house 10 feet above the ground, they're not quite excited about that. But that's the cost of living in that area in a house that's already non-compliant. That's always a possibility, so.
Anything else?
Good? Good.
Yes, I will not be at the June 30th meeting. I will be in the South Pacific.
Where?
Tahiti.
Where's it going? Oh,
I make a motion that we follow her.
Be amazing.
Fine with me.
Okay, I guess we're adjourned.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Standing up motion?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Standing up motion.
I'll second.
Second by
third, fourth.
Yep.
10:19, Linda. Goodwin made a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Where are you going, Linda?
Second
What?
by
I'm going